Want to give me some warmth? There you go. Thank you. First of all, thanks Jury and the Arch Marathon who invited us here, and Simona for again having us here on her dime. It's quite spectacular. I'm here to. My name is Sasha, and I'm going to talk about our modest project based on the budgets that we're here today in Winnipeg, Canada, which is smack middle of North America, if you can imagine, just under the North Pole. The project itself is located on something that's sort of a non-site, if you wish. It's obvious from the image where that is. The only frontage onto a street is the little short line on the right-hand side. And we actually, our client, when he approached us, said there's this very inexpensive site because it has no frontage onto a street, and do you think we can do something with it? So the street he purchased closed it, and it's used to be called McDonald Street. So now the project takes the name from its address and its street name 62M. The site, as you can see, is grubby. It is sort of nondescript. It's at the very edge of downtown. Red light district is half a block over. There's a highway on one side and a bunch of industrial buildings throughout or around the building itself. So we said to our client, yeah, there's two things we should consider for something like this. One is to lift the building off the ground so we can get views or maintain views for the owners of the condos or the dwellers, but we have to keep it low because we don't hit the next code instance in which actually we have to do all kinds of code things. So keeping it low and making it high. And one thing that we all did to convince ourselves that this is a decent idea is we rented a scissor lift, got up to the site and shot some views of Winnipeg, and that's what it looks like in the summer. And so after that, given the climate that we're in, and our temperatures goes from -40 to +40 in a year, so everything else became an exercise in efficiency. So we've done a lot of tests on site, and you probably would have figured this out much faster than we did, but we realized that the circle is much more efficient than a square for the equivalent enclosed volume. So we realized that the circle is about 30% more or smaller in terms of envelope. Again, being in the air, we had to reduce the envelope size. And therefore, it became this disk hovering above its surrounding environment. So the real key to the project was working with a contractor, trying to figure out how does one build a building in the air that's supposed not to cost any more than a building on the ground. So we employed everything we had. So the construction technique varies from the bottom up. The concrete of the ground really speaks back to the grubby surrounding of the building, and then the steel's used to transfer those loads back to the core. The columns themselves are shaped by the radial geometry, as you can see on the bottom right, meaning that depending on the location of the column, the views out of the center of the circle actually skim some of these shavings, if you wish. And on top of concrete columns and from the concrete core comes out the radial spokes, the beams, that then cantilever out and form the slab into which prefabricated wood floors are installed. So these are prefabricated units. They were brought in panels and then installed on site one level, one wall at a time, done by Holtz that prefabs anything, as you can see there. And so this hybrid construction type permitted the building to be built for just around 3 million euros. For 41 apartments. And one of the things that was really critical for all that was convincing our contractors that once this is built, this building should not be any more complicated to finish than any other two-story building. So that was on our contractor, and so everything is really playing off this grubbiness and grit that Winnipeg is actually all about. So coming to Milan or coming to Miami last year was a real change of environment for us because there's none such glitz where we come from. The circle, that's a theme of the building, is very difficult to achieve, as you can probably commiserate with us with straight pieces of material. So we had to develop a strategy that would camouflage the faceted nature of the windows, which became this geometry of fins that run at the mullions and therefore mask the mask the faceted nature of the windows. This is a summer picture of Winnipeg. Our envelope, again, is fairly complicated. I'm not going to get into that. We have to hit very high R values, and but you can see here how the fins act dually. They hide all the seams between the elements of the project, and we were able to. We end up using a very thin sheet of Corten, which masks any oil canning that happens through its velvety texture. So therefore, the assembly could look, as you can see here, fairly uniform and round. The building, as you can see, hovers above its surrounding. The first project we did, the developer, is one on the left there, the white boxes, and the building the views out of the building hover just about it, hover just above the highway next door. The view up is to obviously to the geometry of the building, but also to the corridors, which are open. We're trying to, again, given the fact that it's in a I promise I didn't do this. She's on Instagram, I think. The views up are through the structure. We're trying to create as many connections between people inside the building and outside. So, somewhat contrary to intuition, all of our hallways are open. So at any given time in the building, you can see about 20 doors as you turn left and right, and hopefully you're going to get to meet your neighbors. The hallways were quickly populated by bicycles, and one of the things that we would probably change about the building is made the hallway slightly wider because people like to come out and smoke and hang out in that space. So just to explain the building structure a little bit more, the center column, if you wish, contains scissor stairs and an elevator up to the about 35 feet, which is 11 meters. Off the ground, and two layers of pancake on top of each other, and a rooftop terrace on top of that. This is a little pet peeve of ours. I'll convert these numbers for us Europeans. The Americans used to live in about 25 square meters in 50s. Today, North Americans occupy about 85 square meter per person. That's sort of the typical scale. So one of the things that for dwellings. So one of the things we've been fighting in our city is proving how one can live in smaller spaces. So this building is actually a reasonable example of that. So here you can see a typical floor plan of the two. In the center is the circulation. One thing that's afforded by the shape is a very short corridor. So you get about 2 meters of space at the corridor side, which is your worst part of the building, and about 6.5 meters on the other side. The other reason we've opted for an open-air corridor, it's very uncommon in North America to have cross-ventilation. This actually enables cross-ventilation through the suite. And the advantage that we've discovered of a circular, if you wish, or a pie shape is the fact that the spaces that need light are very close to the windows. That's where the unit is at its widest, and utility is in the very back. So we ended up with two typical floor plans, one more and one less conventional. This is the more conventional one. It goes from the entrance, from the storage to bathroom to laundry, kitchen, dining, and living, and Murphy bed for sleeping. This is it shown in a night condition when the sliding panels are closed. That's the rendering of that. And then the other one is more of a Swiss knife, more of a European thinking, similar to Gary's conversation, which is sort of everything is concealed within a 1 meter deep storage wall on one side, with the tub being the only element that's actually floating off from that spine, and then everything can get closed, including the kitchen, as you can see on that left image. That big door can actually close. So the building sort of, again, hovers above its environment. It creates for a rather unique space underneath it. It was pretty much a gamble on how good and what quality of that space will be, but it's actually, in actuality, it is creating for a very unique and interesting public space, which we're hoping we're going to get to program. Here you can see some of it as the building is just about being finished. So you can see how the space underneath looks. The approach to concrete was always about roughness, rawness, and connection to the environment, and then the refuge is in the cloud that the building is. A quick story before I finish. A developer who is a good friend owed us a lot of money at some point of the project. It took about 4 years to build, as he was sort of getting money from every possible source he found. And at one point we said, we know you're going to pay, but we need something else from you. So we bartered and got a right to build a little suite on top of the elevator core. We said you can save all the money on not building a roof on top of that. And this has become a place from which the entire Winnipeg can be seen, a quite a unique perspective for something in this part of town. And we've been using it as a artist in residence spot in Winnipeg, and that's where our friends usually stay. So if you're coming to Winnipeg, please give us a call. We'll put you there. I think there's one more slide, but it doesn't want to switch. There it is. So here it is in its all glory above the highway, the only elevated highway in Winnipeg. Thank you.
So thank you, Sasha. We were wondering, what happens. You said something about what happened down, but you didn't explain quite clear what happens below. And I really like how it looks, but why did you lift it up so much? What happened with the area below and the cost and?
One of the things that's a requirement here is parking, and the site was too small to house parking outside of the building, right? Outside of the building footprint. So the only thing we could do is put it underneath the building, and that's really what happens. So a portion of the ground floor is parking. It's about 50-50, so it's parking and landscape. And then we do have one projection wall, and we're working with artists to start to inhabit that as I guess I can't switch back, but as one of the concrete walls. And so that is part and parcel of the culture, which is driving. And we weren't trying to get cars out, but that's sort of the way it appears. It gets vacated during the day when people go out to work, right? And then it gets again occupied. So it has that nature, and we're still trying to figure out how the condo board has to figure out how to program and plan that. But we're there trying to we were just working with a developer. He still wants to put some money into it. So we're working with a few artists trying to figure out how to embellish, I guess, and how to connect it to the site. The Winnipeg is it's famous for its Aboriginal population. It has the largest urban population or Aboriginal or native population. And so we're working with some native artists to actually take ownership of the building as well. And landscaping is not done yet. Sorry, it's all it is right now is the construction leftovers.
So actually, I agreed with Rosanna because for me, the first question is always from every project, what city and what citizen will get from it. Not just good facades from its inhabitants,
right.
but for the other ones who see it every day, or maybe once alive, I don't know.
Right.
Still, for me, it would be very interesting what will happen downstairs on the ground plane.
Right. As I mentioned, so 50% of the leftover space is green. So we're gonna landscape that in the spring again. Right now, it looks like this approximately. Right. It's winter in Winnipeg, so it's not plantable. So that is what's happening in the surrounding. And again, it was an interesting. We'll call it a compromise, but it was an interesting dialogue trying to fit into a rather hostile environment that it is and trying to contribute. And so balancing act between contributing and to what the street is going to be, and then knowing that there's nobody who can actually come there because it's cut off the world, right? Because it has no access to the street. So it's a very, very convoluted urban site. And I think it took an effort to bring density and population in order to figure, because it's on the very edge of the city, so it took a density to bring in people to took this effort to bring people to the site, so we can now start creating ownership and try to make them feel like they belong there, right? And I understand where you're going with the question, of course, right? It is what is happening at the street level. Thank you so much. Thank you.